everyone, welcome to the Colleen Cape Dress and Top Sew Along. Today I am going to be sharing with you a few different stitches that you can use when sewing with knit fabrics, even if you don't have a serger. Okay, the first stitch I'm going to be sharing with you today is the traditional zigzag stitch. Now for me, this is number 2 on my machine. I highly recommend familiarizing yourself with all of the stitches that are available on your sewing machine and knowing the names and functionalities of all of those stitches. Now, the zigzag stitch is the most basic stitch for stretch fabrics, and it is named because it looks like a simple zigzag. So I am going to show you how to sew a zigzag stitch on my little scrap of fabric here. I usually backstitch just as I would if I was sewing with a straight stitch, and then just sew. Now I am assuming I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And you can adjust the length of your stitch as well as the width of your stitch as needed. And a back stitch at the end. Okay, and this is our traditional zigzag stitch. As I was saying, you can adjust the stitch length, which will determine the amount of space in between each zigzag here. And you can also change the width of the stitch, which will change how wide the zigzags go from side to side. Now, as you can see, this stitch is quite stretchy, and when we pull our garment open, we don't see too much pulling of the threads from the right side of the garment, which is great. And this is a perfectly great way to construct a knit garment made with knit fabrics. Okay, the next stitch I'm going to show you is called a 3-step zigzag. For me, is stitch number 3 on my machine, and the 3-step zigzag is going to look a lot like the traditional zigzag, except it gives us an extra step in the stitch. So instead of just going from side to side, it takes an extra stitch in the middle of each zigzag. Now let's see what that looks like. And at the end of this video, I will be showing you how all of these stitches look side by side, as well as comparing the stretch factor of each stitch. Let me shorten the length on this a bit. Okay, so as we can see here, we have a zigzag stitch that has an extra step in the middle. We still get a nice stretch, and on the other side here, we still have a nice strong seam that does not show too much of the threads from the other side. And you'll notice that the zigzag takes a little bit longer of a stitch when we do the 3 steps. Okay, so you may notice that you have a lot of different kind of stitches on your machine. Every sewing machine will not have the exact same stitches, but I'm going to show you a few examples of some other stitches that you can also use for sewing stretch garments. The first 2 I've just showed you are probably the most common. These following stitches may or may not be included on your machine, but they are great options for constructing garments with knit fabrics. And I also want to point out here that it is important that you have a needle that is prepared to sew for knit fabrics as well. You want a needle that is either labeled jersey or ballpoint. If you're having trouble stitching on your knit fabrics and the thread keeps nesting or breaking, it may be that you don't have the correct needle in place to sew with knit fabrics. The next stitch I'm going to show is sort of a mock overlocker stitch. This stitch is made to mimic the effect of a serger on your regular sewing machine. So if you don't have a serger and you want sort of like that nice edge finish look that a serger gets, you can try your overlocker stitch on your traditional straight stitch machine. And since I am treating this as an overlocker, I am sewing right on the edge of my fabric here for this stitch. Okay, so as you can see, the stitch sort of binds the edge of the fabric here as we sew, and we still have some nice stretch to our stitch. Not as much as the zigzag, but we do have some nice stretch here. And when we open it up, we don't have any extra threads poking out from the right side. So one con to this is that it is slower than your zigzag, and it will take up a lot more thread than just a typical zigzag stitch. But if it's really important to you how nice the insides look, this could be a good option. Okay, another quick stitch I wanted to share with you is the feather stitch, and this one is really nice because it looks pretty. So in the event that you have any top stitching, if you want to edge stitch your seam allowance down around your neckband, or you may use this often in lingerie making, this could be a really great stitch because it provides stretch but also looks really pretty. On my machine, this is stitch number 14. Okay, so as you can see, the feather stitch has this really cute, almost viney detail, and we still have a fair amount of stretch here, making it great for top stitching, etc. Okay, another quick stitch I wanted to show y'all is the twin needle stitch. Now, you would mostly use this to do hems on garments in knit fabric, and I do have a video coming that fully shows how to do a hem using a twin needle, but it is a very useful stitch to have in your knit fabrics arsenal, so I did want to make sure to show it to you here as well. Now, I've just folded up my fabric as if I'm doing a hem. However, on a twin needle, we stitch from the right side of the garment. That is where the nice neat twin needle stitch is going to show. So I recommend either marking your fold and using your tick marks on your machine to make sure that you are keeping everything even. I also can kind of feel the line where my fabric ends, the edge of my fabric ends, and I want to try to line up that line with the needle that is on the left hand side. I have already threaded this up. Again, I show how to thread a twin needle in my twin needle hem video coming soon. This is how we would stitch it together. So for the twin needle, I'm using the straight stitch on my machine, number 1, but I am stitching with the twin needle threaded in. We don't have to pick a new stitch. We are just going to stitch with the twin needle, and it will do everything that we need it to do. Okay, so as you can see, we have our nice twin needle hem here. It will need some pressing. It still has a good amount of stretch, even though what we see on top is all straight stitches. When we look underneath, the twin needle creates a zigzag at the back, and that's where we get that stretch from. Now, you may find it hard to sort of find the correct balance of tension when you're using a twin needle. This stitch has a little bit of tunneling, which is the middle of the stitches sort of puckers up in a arched way, which isn't desirable. So in this instance, you would want to play with loosening your tension to get that to lay nice and flat. Okay, so in this last but not least, I did want to share with you how a surge stitch works so that we can compare it with other stretch stitches on our regular machine. Even though this video is more focused on sewing a knit garment without your serger, I thought it would be interesting to compare the surge stitch side by side. So I'm just doing a basic 4-thread serger stitch. Okay, and here is what that 4-thread stitch looks like. It is very neat and clean and encompasses the edge of the fabric, as well as gives us a very clean look from the face of the fabric, and it is nice and stretchy. Okay, so here we have all of our stitches side by side. Honestly, the two that I use the most are probably the standard zigzag and the twin needle hem. I feel like using these two, you can perfectly construct any knit garment that you need on a home sewing machine. Now, the mock serge thread is nice. It does have that nice clean look. Personally, for me, it doesn't have quite the same amount of stretch that I like, and it just takes too long as far as constructing a whole garment goes. To me, the stitch is just too time consuming. Now, the feather stitch, I do love the way it looks, and I do love to use it on top stitching for neck bands and lingerie, etc. And it does have a very nice stretch to it. Now, the 3-step zigzag you would also maybe use in lingerie quite often. As you can see, it does create a longer stitch length than the traditional zigzag, and we can open those two up side by side and see that the thread peaking is about the same on both, and I feel like the stretch is very similar on both as well. If anything, to me, the 3-step zigzag has a little bit more stretch than the traditional zigzag. Another thing I like about the 3-step zigzag is that it gives you that extra anchor point in between the stitches rather than just having an anchor point at every zigzag point. And then lastly, of course, we all love a serger stitch. It is so fast and easy to work with. This, of course, is my favorite way to construct knit garments, but I know we don't all have sergers, so I just wanted you to see what some of your options were on your home sewing machine. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Colleen Cape Dress and Top Sew Along. I look forward to sharing more resources and tutorials with you that will be helpful for constructing your Colleen Cape dress or top. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video so that you don't miss any other videos that I put out for the sew along. Happy sewing! Bye!